The game does manage to do an admirable job of evoking the memory of a much more popular title, as well as adding in a few original wrinkles in an attempt to make it qualify as unique. That said, it still falls way short of the goal. Once you hit start, you're given the mission objective direct from the President. Now, I'm not sure why the President is taking time out of his busy schedule to personally send you on a suicide mission to blow up various objects, but hey, let's roll with it. Your first mission is to go deep behind enemy lines and destroy a trio of battleships that are floating in the harbor. So naturally you hop on your motorcycle for a one-man frontal assault. Yes, it's safe to say whoever came up with this plan was quite possibly a taco short of a combo blade. Now, if this were Spy Hunter, your motorcycle would be tricked out with every weapon imaginable. Here, however, your motorcycle has a single-shot pea shooter and, well, not much else. Seriously, they couldn't even spring for a machine gun. To make things worse, if you bump into anything, you explode, which wouldn't be too bad if you could actually outrun the enemy. Sadly, your bosses are apparently concerned with speeding, so your bike has what appears to be a top speed of about 45 miles an hour. This just happens to be the magic speed that is both slow enough to let the enemy catch up with you while simultaneously being just fast enough to make it virtually impossible to avoid any obstacle that pops up on the road. Thankfully, there is a lengthy timer instead of a lives counter for this part of the game, so you are free to crash as many times as you like, and crash you will. Luckily, the motorcycle portion of the level is very short-lived. Every time you're able to blow up an enemy vehicle, it triggers the release of a letter from the top of the screen. After you collect A through D, your motorcycle transforms into a car. Well, it doesn't really transform, instead half a dozen metal parts fly in from all angles and fuse to your motorcycle, making the change. It's never explained why, if your country possesses the type of precision technology that allows metal objects to hit a moving target and fuse together, why you would be sent on a suicide mission rather than simply fusing bombs to the hulls of the ships you are being sent to destroy. Anyway, now that you have your car, it's time to do some real damage. The car packs a little more punch than the motorcycle. You can not only ram cars into barriers, but you have a more powerful gun that allows you to mow through enemy after enemy. This sounds more fun than it actually is, thanks to the fact there are a grand total of 4 different vehicles on the road, one of which is an ally. In addition to the standard motorcycle and car, you also have to destroy endless streams of ambulances. Seriously, how devoted are you to killing your enemies when you turn their cars into flaming piles of twisted metal, only to blow up the ambulances carrying their charred remains to the hospital? Just like in Spy Hunter, you occasionally get the opportunity to power up your vehicle by pulling into a nondescript van that shows up on the highway. Well, in Spy Hunter it's nondescript. Here it has a giant Sega logo plastered on the van. This brings up 2 questions. 1, why, if you're on a top secret mission behind enemy lines, did somebody think it was wise to advertise who is doing the assault? And 2, why is Sega funding a covert operation to destroy military equipment in a rival nation? Unlike Spy Hunter, however, you don't get cool weapons like oil slicks and smoke screens. Instead, you get a small upgrade to your gun, which goes away as soon as you crash, which means you'll get the extra firepower for about 6 seconds. Unless you get really good at the game, you're going to be better off just driving past them, since saving as much time on the clock is more important than the brief access to added weaponry. Speaking of brief, your time in the car is going to be pretty much over as soon as it begins, since you only need to collect 3 more letters before your next upgrade. As you reach the end of the road, your car freezes in time and 2 jet engines attach themselves to the rear spoiler and sends you up into the heavens for the final part of the level. And yes, apparently during that brief pause to attach jet engines, you had enough time to rewrite the laws of physics. The flying portion of the game is the only place where Action Fighter stands apart from Spy Hunter, and it's also the place where the difficulty ramps up dramatically. Unlike the driving sections, where the biggest danger was an ambulance bumping you off a bridge, the flying segments has death coming at you from every conceivable angle. There are packs of alien ships that dart across the screen, jet fighters that not only try to shoot you, but try to turn themselves into kamikaze pilots, as well as attack choppers that will hover right in front of you just long enough to mock you before gunning you down. If that wasn't enough, you also have to contend with ground forces like tanks and gunships shooting at you from below. As you fly, you'll notice you have a set of crosshairs just in front of your jet car. This is your ground targeting system, and it gives you just enough of a reach to be able to take out ground-based enemies that just blow you out of the sky. In all the times I've played this, I think I've successfully destroyed a tank and escaped unharmed a grand total of 3 times. So while it was a nice thought to have ground-based attacks, the execution leaves a lot to be desired. I'm not going to go as far as to say it's totally broken, but given that the ground forces seem to have trouble shooting diagonally, it makes much more sense to simply avoid the enemy rather than engage them. Actually, given that the air forces often take multiple hits, it's in your best interest to employ a strategy of non-engagement and simply fly around them. which is made easier after a few attempts since the enemies have very predictable flight paths. Now, even though a skilled jet car pilot can navigate the not-so-friendly skies without using much ammo, this is still an incredibly difficult section of the game thanks to the fact that both the enemies and their bullets travel at a much faster rate than you do. To make things even more interesting, frustrating, is that the clouds will occasionally clip over the enemies and their bullets, making them invisible to you. Well, invisible until they turn your car into shrapnel. Also, even when they aren't hiding under the clouds, the bullets are white, which can make them kind of difficult to see when you're flying over the clouds. On a side note, the more I play this game, the more I'm convinced that Action Fighter began life as a straight-up shooter instead of a Spy Hunter knockoff it became. The flying sections are much more in-depth compared to the driving sections, and it seems like they were added on simply to beat Nintendo to the punch to have a Spy Hunter type game on the system. Of course, Nintendo eventually won the battle by actually having Spy Hunter on the NES the following year. Over the course of the 5 levels, you will bounce back and forth between the air and the ground combat zones. However, since you only have 2 lives after your timer runs out, it's going to take a minor miracle for you to even see the words Level 2. While this extreme level of difficulty was necessary in the era that had replay value, today it is nothing more than an exercise in frustration.